And so welcome to the Nikki Show. Thank you for joining us. So happy to have an industrialist and a leading businessman joining us today on the show, Mr. Busisa Moyo. A very good day. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Nikki. And hello, listeners.
So, something that's very interesting is that you were recently inducted into the Business Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And how does that make you feel? I mean, when you reflect on the journey and where you are now.
Yes, it was a humbling moment to be inducted into the Business Hall of Fame. Really a humbling moment. I still believe there's much to be done. And I'm always thinking about, community, country, continent, and how far and how much work we still need to do. And it would be great to be recognized when the continent is humming, when the community is doing well, when the country is doing exceptionally well. However, we do receive the recognition. I think it's a mile marker,
of course,
but it does point to the responsibility, the burden of responsibility that falls on leaders and people that are looked up to in whatever way or in some shape or form.
We'll talk about you sitting on the ZITF board. We'll talk about a ZITF. There's so many places in business, in the business sector, both in the public and private sector, where your name is mentioned and celebrated. But let's look at the journey from where you started. Are you from an affluent background? Did it all come with glitters and stars?
Not really, Nikki, not really. I come from a very humble background. My parents were teachers. They were school teachers in Matebeleland South, Bulilima, and Mangwe districts. And in my early childhood, I would travel with them to different schools. In grade 1, I did it in a very humble place called Dokwana School, which was a rural school. And my grade 2, I did in Bambadzi, which is deep. They have elephants there that come and destroy property. So that was my early childhood. But my parents decided after a while that traveling around wasn't good for us and wasn't character building enough. So we ended up in Tingomuzi, which was a township, is the equivalent of Mbare in Plumtree. Tingomuzi township, that's where we grew up. And then we moved to the suburbs in that small little town, in a place called Hebron. And that's where my parents still are today. And so that's the background I came from. I was fortunate. My parents did make big sacrifices and sent us to very good schools. I went to Plumtree School in the 90s and did okay at Plumtree. I didn't make head boy, but I was the deputy head boy.
Well
so
done.
Was my first leadership, but I had a very talented head boy by the name of Henry Olonga, who many people know, and I was his deputy. But he was never at school, so technically, as he says, I was always the head boy. But it was a sore point because here I was feeling I should be head boy, and then him saying, "Look, you're really the head boy, but you're not the head boy." So that was my early childhood and leadership roles. Before primary school, I was raised by my grandmother because my parents were at war, went to war.
Okay.
So they were war veterans.
How difficult was that for you?
It was a tough time, but I was young. I think they left when I was 3, from 1978 to 1980 or 79 or just before independence. So it was a tough time. My mother was teaching in schools, but my dad actually went to Zambia during that time of the liberation struggle. And my grandmother and my grandfather was Angari Mujoni, so he was running businesses in Cape Town. And he was my young inspiration that's where first businessman that I ever met was my grandfather. His name was Enoch Little Malikongwa.
So these roots have been they have been planted, leadership in school, and then the business sector from your grandfather, right? So you've got a bit of, so you see a bit of establishment there, and then moving forward for you to then land your first job and be established in the corporate sector. Do you have any memory of it where you look back and say, "Whoa"?
Well, not really. I think it's a whole bunch of things coming together, and Almighty God orchestrating certain things to come together. So I leave school. I didn't go to university the formal way. In the mid-90s, they had a program in accounting, which was articles. So I did articles with Deloitte. Again, very fortunate. I was picked from school, and they said, look, we want this young man to join us. I was in the Bulawayo office, but coming to Harare often and going around Zimbabwe. So that was, but I didn't really enjoy accounting. I was mathematical, I was financial, I'm very left-brained. So I then left, I joined TA Holdings. So I cut my teeth at TA Holdings essentially in terms of, post-qualification career, I'd say, because I then worked for Shingai Mutasa at TA Holdings. He was really the man who really sent the lift down. And, I started off as management accountant at Blue Ribbon Foods, group accountant at Aroma Bakeries. And then I moved up to TA head office very quickly, actually, to be investments and monitoring manager for TA Holdings. So I was looking after the hotel businesses, the manufacturing businesses like Sable Chemicals and United Refineries, where I ended up, and Blue Ribbon Foods, and then the insurance companies, really looking at the whole stable. We were deal making, we were an in-house deal making outfit for Mr. Mutasa and the executive team at TA Holdings. So I was exposed to, high level business at a young age. This was, I think I wasn't even 26, 27 at that time.
Amazing.
And but credit to Mkoma Shingai, because he picked young people at the time and said, look, I want to profile young Black Zimbabweans. I wanted to go into the diaspora. He sent me on executive education to University of Chicago. After that, I was like, I don't want to be back in Zimbabwe. I want to stay. And he said, if you want to do well, if you want to be wealthy, stay in Zimbabwe. That was his advice. Stuck. I remember I was.
Listen to those words. Listen to those words.
Yes.
And I want you to just reflect now. I'm gonna ask you something. I want you to stay in Zimbabwe.
Yes, I want you to stay in Zimbabwe. If you want to do well, if you want to be wealthy, stay in Zimbabwe. That's what he said. It was at his house, and I remember the day. It was a picture moment that sort of froze in time, and that advice stayed with me. So even after my MBA in Spain, I came back and bought into United Refineries and with a couple of friends, and it's been quite a journey.
Now, you've been involved in the private and public sector, as I mentioned earlier on, and you were established in business at a very young age. What are some of the challenges that you faced when you look back and say, look, and also how did you overcome them?
That is a very good question. There were lots of challenges. I think the early challenges I remember was, youth. When you are young, people tend to look down on you. They're contemptuous of your ideas. They value the passion, they value the zeal or the brilliance, but will always discount it. So I think in my early years, that was I could see myself doing more work, pulling much more than the others, but the others getting the glory and the salary and the car. And that was a little bit sore because I was putting in the hard slog. But that's part of youth and the learnings and the exposure. If I were to go back, I would do it differently. I would appreciate more not being in the limelight and, working in the background. Maybe
Why so?
Maybe a little bit of reward, but I think I was a very grumpy background person, because, I'm working late. I remember our youngest daughter, Buchilo, we were staying in Helensvale, and I'd get home late many nights. But I had a boss, Tendai Gombera, who was above me, and I always felt, he would get to present and get all the credit. But, my moments did come, and I should have taken time maybe to learn and to assimilate, because there is a moment that comes, and all that preparation then counts for something. And also, if you are, they call it the bamboo principle. The bamboo, when you plant it, you don't see it for many weeks. You do not see anything. But once it sprouts, it's growing at the rate of something crazy, like, 1
Jack's
meter.
beanstalk.
It's really shooting out. So if you are going high, you've got to go deep. And so if I appreciated that principle, if I was to write a letter, dear younger me, I'd say take the time to learn, assimilate, don't be in a rush. Your moment will come. It's better to be ready for that moment or those moments, because there's several moments with destiny, moments with opportunity, moments to shine, And in TA Holdings, I remember my moment was when we went for a strategy session in Moana in Kasane.
Yeah.
That's part of the Cresta group, Cresta Maracanelo. And I remember presenting to the board, and Koma Shingai put me in charge of the strategy session along with a facilitator, because nobody wanted to do it. It was our first.
Did you feel like this was your chance?
I didn't. But as I reflect back, I see that it was one of those moments. There's something in God called a kairos moment. It's different from time, just the passage of time on the clock. It's opportunity, destiny, moment, time, resources, wisdom, everything coming together in that moment. And those are the moments that are defining and life-changing. And from that day, the company saw me differently. Shingai Mutasa, my boss, saw me differently. And he started to groom me, very consciously, because I think the board said, hey, I think you've got a talented young man there. You need to give him, some room to grow and expose him. That's when I started getting sent off to the US, and TA had a brilliant development program in-house. We had consultants from overseas. So I was rubbing shoulders with guys from Arthur Anderson, lawyers from Wall Street. So really a great opportunity, but I wouldn't have gotten there if it wasn't for that moment where I presented the strategy of the company and convened the strategy, compiled it for the board. And I think that was my moment with destiny in those years. There have been many others before now, maybe on a national scale. CZI. I remember CZI when I became president, and people say, how did that happen? I won, or United Refineries won Exporter of the Year, I think in 2013 or 14.
And that was a big thing.
And it became a big thing. And that was a moment, again, unprepared, but I arrived there and I had to give a speech after winning the award. And then said, hey, Charles Msipa, another brother, I have these older brothers. Charles Msipa, MD Schweppes, then said, hey, I was chairman of the chamber in Bulawayo at the time, the industry chamber, Matabeleland Chamber of Industries, or president of the chamber. And he said, hey, wait, this young man, I think he has potential. And one thing led to another. Before I was national president, CZI, it was rare in those days to have a president of CZI outside of Harare.
Yeah.
So again, defining moment. And there's several others during CZI that then led to public sector, because CZI was advocacy. So in advocacy, you interact a lot with public sector officials, government. Dr. Mishek Sbanda, who really got me involved, the former chief secretary to the president and cabinet, he goes, let's go Zim Asset days, if you remember Zim Asset.
Yeah.
We had to go to Nyanga with World Bank and UNDP, thresh out strategies for value chains. That's where it all started. And, people took notice, I think, of talent, hard work, commitment to the country, which are values I have. I value contribution. I value making a difference. And people notice that. I value seeing other Africans doing well. And I don't.
So you give others a chance?
I do.
You believe in giving others a platform?
I do.
Now, you've been at the helm of CZI. And as you said, it's an advocacy group more than anything else. Zimbabwe is doing a lot to attract investment at the moment. What are we doing right? And how can we do better?
It's a good question. It's a lot of things. I think, our national brand is a key asset in attracting, foreign direct investment, and how we put ourselves out there. Now, we've had a lot of bashing in terms of image.
Of course.
National image. And so there's a need to rebrand ourselves. There's a lot that is happening in Zimbabwe that doesn't get out there. Are we saying we should put the bad under the carpet? No, but we must let the wheat and the tares grow together. There's a lot of wheat, a lot of good that is out there. Entrepreneurs that are starting new businesses, women that are hustling, young people that are coming up with ideas, doing apps and all sorts of things, and those need investment. And so those stories need to be told, the good stories as well, the stories of entrepreneurship, the stories of our education and how to pivot that education into value, how to turn potential into opportunity and opportunity into value. So those stories is what ZIDA, Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, is about. What are we doing right? Well, I think the team, and I give a credit to our CEO, Mr. Tafazo Shinamo, who's worked very hard. But I also had the chance to work with Douglas Munatsi, who was our founding CEO. I was a founding chairman, which is a great honor from His Excellency, the President, to allow a young person like myself. There were so many, mature chairmen, ex-bankers that could have been there, but he saw it fit that I would be the inaugural chairman. So I've had an opportunity to work great team members like Duduzi Leshinya, now Teresa Muchinguri, and the team at ZIDA, Noah. So we have a great team out there, and they've done a good work in putting systems together that allow the investor experience to be seamless, to establish investment, and to allow the development of investments, what we call aftercare. So after a person comes into the country, invests, there's the journey of running the operation. And so ZIDA plays a role in that. And then in the exit as well. So that's part of the aftercare. And ZIDA has done a lot of work to put systems to make that seamless. Right now we're busy digitizing. We started off by digitizing ZIDA, but now we discovered that digitizing ZIDA alone doesn't do as much as having ZIMRA being linked to us, companies registry, NASA, EMA. You probably aware of this, that ZIDA has 19 desks from various MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies that are at ZIDA, so that the investor comes to one place and doesn't have to traverse the length and breadth of the country.
So it's some sort of convergence.
Yes, it's what we call the one-stop shop.
Lovely.
And that's it at ZB Life Towers on Jason Moyo.
We also have institutions like ZITF.
ZITF.
And how important is ZITF in also bringing out Zimbabwe's visibility and economic growth?
Absolutely. ZITF is a platform for business and social interactions, and plays a role in nation branding, which is an issue that I raised earlier when you asked, what are we doing right? So we play a big part in that. And we've been working together with the Ministry of Information to say, how can we message the story of Zimbabwe a whole lot better than what we've done now? Get the message out that there are corporates, multinationals. In our sector, we have 4 multinationals in the cooking oil industry.
Yep.
That are operating in Zimbabwe. We have Export Trading Group, we have Wilma, we have Willerton in there, we have Mount Meru. These are multinational companies that are operating in Zimbabwe. And so ZITF is one platform where we profile and project what is happening in Zimbabwe in 1 week. And we get to showcase the story of Zimbabwe from a business point of view. And this year, our theme is industrialization, creating an integrated economic landscape. So again, profiling, putting it front and center, the issue of industrialization. And in that 1 week, in those 6 days, you get to see the who's who of business, as well as policymakers who will be in Bulawayo for that 1 week. So that's the importance of ZITF. We have ambassadors, embassies that come. Last year we had China. China brought 33 Chinese companies, individual. And some of those companies this year have requested that they don't want to be under the embassy. They want to have stands on their own to exhibit. So that's the ecosystem of getting somebody to visit Zimbabwe as a delegate or as a visitor, to become an exhibitor, and to become a trading partner, and eventually an investor. It's a life cycle, it's an ecosystem.
It's an opportunity for us to talk about something very topical right now. US President Donald Trump has imposed tariffs that have shaken economies around the world. How has this affected Zimbabwe? In your case, in your opinion rather, do you think that we have responded in the right way as a nation?
Well, it's still, ball is in play, Nikki. Ball is in play. And in the next few months, we will know. We also know that the US president has retracted now and given 90 days, a 90-day moratorium to leave things as they are pretty much. But with any change comes opportunity. And the changes that the US is making creates an opportunity for Africans and Africa, in particularly in the light of Africa Free Continental, AFCFTA, in particular, intra-African trade, the opportunity to trade with each other as Africans, to repurpose our production, manufacturing, mining, tourism, to be a little bit more insular and not always depend on the, global trade being, the pinnacle of our efforts. So this is a challenge. We were taught in business school that, trade, chapter 1, trade makes everyone better off. Well, it's not always true because the rules can change, as we have seen. And so as a Zimbabwean, I then realized that when we were talking Zim asset, when we were talking protectionism, which we were criticized for, SI 64, if you remember,
Yes.
Big fights about, this is old, this is against the textbook. Well, America does it. Suddenly it looks noble. People are justifying it, and people are towing the line. So yes, we're a small country, but I think we had it right. If you look back, that and COVID also taught us that countries shut down trade when they have a crisis, when they have pandemics, and so this means that. And I remember post-COVID, the lesson from business was one word: resilience, and building resilient economies. And I believing building resilient economies involves downstream industries, manufacturing in particular. It involves intra-African trade, trading within the bloc of African countries that's closest to you, and increasing intentionally the level of trade between yourselves. Because when seas shut down, when ports are shut, the one thing you have remaining is your neighbors.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sense, and follow that sense with action, with infrastructure. Mozambique, Angola were built to service Portugal and foreign countries, but not to trade with Zimbabwe, for example. We need to change that.
Yeah. Now, you talked about entrepreneurship being very important, supporting youth in business. Somebody would also then refer to the ease of doing business in the nation. How well are we doing to be able to accommodate young people, their ideas, and also support them?
Nikki, much work needs to be done, to be honest. And we need more of us to work on this issue for greater good, for the benefit of the public. I think young people, women who have previously not been in the mainstream of business, but now that's changing. And so you find that the financial ecosystem, for example, is not geared to support. Asking, for example, for a proof of residency to somebody who's married and doesn't have a property in their own name, so we need to change. There's a whole bunch of building blocks that we need to change. Asking a young person who's just come out of university, who's got a brilliant idea for a proof of residency or a ZESA bill, is no longer, because he's got solar, he's probably living. Some of these things have changed, and we've been overtaken by events. So we need to adjust to the current reality and make sure that we scratch where it itches in terms of resourcing, creating ecosystems for young entrepreneurs. Africa is young. They talk about time billionaires. Time billionaires are people with more than 1 billion seconds left on the planet. When you're 50 like me, you have 1 billion seconds. But when you're 20, you have 2 billion. So you can imagine if 60% of Africa is under 25, we are very wealthy in terms of time, because we have a lot of young people. But that youth is going to be wasted if we don't resource it, if we don't create ecosystems for it. It's going to be 2 billion seconds of poverty, which is not desirable.
Doesn't work. Now, you said, and I stopped you because I wanted you to remember, you had a conversation with Shingai Mtasa, I believe, and he said you need to stay in Zimbabwe. You look back now, you've been inducted into the Business Hall of Fame. You are at the helm and you are regarded as one of the leading captains of industry. As a young person who is tuned in, who is watching right now, and what would you say to them regarding business in Zimbabwe and growing self and the entrepreneurship skill to thrive and succeed?
Thank you. It's a difficult one to answer, and I don't want to act like I have all the answers, but I can only share what was shared with me. Stay on the continent. Mine is a little bit broader. Stay on the continent if you want to do well, if you want to be wealthy, if you want to make a difference. Stay on the continent. Look for ways on the continent to engage in enterprise, in business, in commerce, of whatever kind. Don't despise the day of small beginnings. Start small. I remember our first business. My first business was in furniture, and it was a disaster. But I learned so much.
Why was it a disaster?
Well, there were so many things that were wrong. It was a first venture. It was in furniture business. We had a guy from Malawi who was doing, I don't know whether you know, this cane furniture that is sort of woven out of this grass that grows only in Malawi. And you weave, it's outdoor furniture. Very nice. But we just didn't have, the operational management skills to run that business. And so, it didn't succeed. When you hear of successful people, they normally talk about their successes. But I like to hear about their failures. One great businessman said, don't tell me where I should go. Tell me where I shouldn't go, because I don't want to. If you tell me where I'm going to die, I won't go there. This is Charlie Munger, number 2 at Berkshire Hathaway, the number 2 to Warren Buffett. He says, tell me where not to go. That's why the Bible, the 10 Commandments were written in the negative. Thou shalt not. Telling you what, you can do a million things, but these 10, don't
do them.
It's called, in Latin, it's called via negativa, where you, so for young people, where to play is Africa. Africa is the future. So don't go into the first world unless you're going to get skills, or to learn a trade, or to build networks or contacts. But this is the platform to really shine and do well in the next decade.
Today we celebrate you, inducted into the Business Hall of Fame, and you continue to rise. It's upwards and onwards. And of course, do not despise humble beginnings. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, listeners.
So ndogorera intwazve mangoda kwachiadzwa. They were told ndakaonekwa kwachiadzwa ndikarumwa nembwa ndikafa. Vakatochema vakanyarara.
Vakatoita navo.